I was talking to a good friend of mine this week. Kind of a hard conversation. She has a beautiful daughter whom I know, who started to suffer from a kind of mysterious and chronic health problem. She's a beautiful young person, smart, kind. But unfortunately now she's living with this chronic inflammation in her eyes. It's something in her eyes. So her eyes are often swollen and painful. And, she's so sad about this situation that she cries. According to my friend, the daughter keeps saying that she doesn't understand how it started. Maybe it started last summer. It makes no sense to her. There was nothing that happened to her that was different. It came out of nowhere. Why is it this way? I don't understand. And it makes her really upset. So in addition to this physical condition that she has, she suffers from mental anguish at her dismay at not knowing where it came from and not knowing if it's going to end, when it's going to end. Yeah. So she's spending a lot of time visiting doctors, trying to find a cure, as any of us would do. She's trying to cure it so she can go back to the way that she was before. So, this might sound familiar to some of you. It certainly does to me. Illness is a very unpleasant thing, and chronic illness can really become all-consuming. But the bigger problem for most people is most people won't accept the illness. There's this great fear that if we accept it, it will win. It'll consume you. It'll take over. The Buddha's teachings on several of his teachings, but the one that comes to mind in particular is the 3 marks of existence, which I may have mentioned before. The 3 marks of existence, meaning the 3 truths that we have to understand about life. Number 1, unsatisfactoriness. Number 2, impermanence. And number 3, no self, selflessness. Each one of them applies here, but in particular, the first teaching on unsatisfactoriness, also the first noble truth, there is suffering. But by unsatisfactoriness, Buddha meant something like life's not just a bowl of cherries. My grandma used to say that. Life's not just a bowl of cherries. I mean, life is a miracle, and it's very possible to be happy, to be alive, even with illness, even with chronic illness. Life has difficulties in it, so don't be surprised, is what Buddha was saying. This too is part of the package. And his wisdom is to accept it. Say yes. Say yes. In Buddhism, if you say no to life's difficulties, it's called the concept is called the second arrow. You get wounded if somebody shoots you with an arrow, which I guess at his time people got shot by arrows regularly. If you get shot by an arrow, it's a difficult, painful experience. if someone shoots you with a second arrow in the exact same place, it is 10 times as painful. And resistance to what is happening to you is like shooting yourself with a second arrow. So, yes, I have contracted a strange and painful condition in my eyes. Yes, it makes me very uncomfortable. Yes. I look in the mirror and I don't quite look like myself. Yes. Yep. This might be chronic. I might have this the rest of my life. Yes. So acceptance doesn't mean being fatalistic or nihilistic or like refusing to do anything to help oneself. That's not it at all. It's an attitude. The moment you accept something dreadful, it starts to lose its power over you. It starts to lose the center stage. So you can try this experiment literally with anything in your life, and I invite you to experiment with it. For example, you could, I'm unhappy, really unhappy. Yes, I'm unhappy. I'm so unhappy. Like, accept it. Yeah, I'm really, really unhappy. Like, sit with that for a few minutes, that acceptance. This movement, this mental movement of acceptance, literally, like, it removes the fuel from the mental anguish. Because our problems really need resistance. They need our resistance to cause that additional suffering. Again, acceptance does not mean that you want the problem. Acceptance means that you see the problem. And there's a big difference. Acceptance also allows you to relax. Like, your cortisol will drop, your adrenaline will drop, you're getting out of fight mode. And when you relax, your body can do its own healing work, which is really important, better. The doctors are wonderful, but our own body has infinite wisdom. So you want to keep this body of ours relaxed and supported, and acceptance is a very important part of that support. And when you relax, your mind also relaxes. So you'll think more creatively about solutions. You'll maybe not spend all of your time with the doctors on this particular issue. You can see that things are in your own power. There are things in our own power. There's certainly many things we have to do to live with limited physical limitations, I would say. So accepting the bad, was the first thing that Buddha realized we have to do in order to alleviate our suffering. On Sunday, our family went to church, which doesn't often happen. We all went together, and it was wonderful. The pastor gave a really nice sermon. My husband and I both commented afterwards, what a nice sermon he shared. And he started by sharing a comic strip, a Peanuts comic strip. And Linus walks up to Charlie Brown and says, Charlie Brown, do you want to know what's the matter with you? Charlie Brown's, no. Linus says, I'll tell you what's the matter with you. ... And then the pastor mentioned, he said, most people who come to him for counsel, they know well what's the matter with them. And what he finds is that they know too well. Like, there's a lot of attention put on the bad. So this is different. This is a different mental energy than accepting something that causes you suffering. There's a difference here, which is why I wanted to point that out. People usually, without realizing it, and you start to realize it when you bring mindfulness into your daily life, that people usually have a lot of mental energy spent on kind of what's the matter. So like, what's the matter with me? What's the matter with him? Like, that's a big one. We're all very good at finding what's the matter with other people. What's the matter with the world? What's the matter with, anything really, this economic policy or that politician. And by the way, it's okay if this happens to be you, just welcome to the club. It's quite normal, because humans have this negativity bias. We have this legitimate mechanism in our brains, hardwired to focus on what's bad, what's broken, what's wrong, what's dangerous. Our brain guarantees that we're going to be focused on what's the matter. But in modern life, this instinct of ours develops into stress, anxiety, depression. It adds to chronic physical illnesses. It adds fuel to that fire, unless we take action otherwise. Unless we take action otherwise. We know from the research that the human negativity bias needs to be counteracted by a multiple of 5 times. If we want to stay well in the mind, in the body, for every one thing that we see wrong in the world, in our life, in our body, and in our companions, we need to see 5 things that are okay. 5 things that are going the way they should or that are going great. So it's a 5-to-1. So we have to dig deep, and it has to become a daily habit. It's not like Pollyanna thinking, by the way. Certainly in me, there's an instinct to criticize this search for the positive as kind of Pollyannish, like, oh. But it's modern day survival. Like, if we don't do this, the physical ramifications are meaningful. Like, stress and anxiety produced by all of this negative thinking leads to increased blood pressure, increased inflammation, chronic issues, certainly neurological issues. So it really behooves us to look for this. The research has proven, in the last 10 years, the research is tremendous on the importance. So it's not instinctual, but once you make this your intention to look for the good, it becomes much easier. But it takes practice, right? Last week I mentioned driving. Like on one trip in a vehicle, whether you're driving or someone else is driving, you can notice that you're passing thousands of complete strangers on the road, and everyone is cooperating. And the rules of the road aren't exactly simple, but everyone is cooperating so that they stay safe. This is amazing. It's nothing that dogs and cats can do. But our usual habit is to not notice this. Right? The usual habit is to notice the one guy who very dangerously cut you off, you almost crashed, and that moment will stay with you for that day and many days thereafter. That's the hardwiring. But if you want to move on this path to equanimity, your practice is to notice, make a note of the many moments in the day when things are going well. So shining the light on these things so you can meet your 5-to-1 ratio.